distinguished friends and colleagues. This is Stuart Hamilton, the Pro-Life Activities Coordinator for the Archdiocese of Louisville, Kentucky, serving under Deacon Stephen Bowling. And this is 5 Minutes for Life, where we take 5 minutes to discuss one topic, one ministry, or one event that affects the pro-life movement here in the Archdiocese. In my last video, I did a full-on movie review for The Sound of Freedom. Now, that is the smash hit that stars Jim Caviezel and deals with the very difficult topic of sex trafficking. Now, regardless of what you think about the movie, it is a hit and it's done a lot to shed light on the topic of human trafficking. So in this episode, I want to talk about human trafficking in Kentucky. I want to talk about, first of all, what types of human trafficking are in Kentucky. 2, who is vulnerable to being trafficked in Kentucky. And thirdly, what is Catholic Charities doing to combat human trafficking? And if you hold on to the very end of this video, I have a special free invitation. An invitation for you to get involved in how you can combat human trafficking. So hold on to the end of the video for that wonderful invitation. So first of all, what are the types of human trafficking? There are 2 broad types of human trafficking. First, sex trafficking, and then labor trafficking. Sex trafficking involves when there's an individual or group of individuals that are forced to perform sex acts either physically or over the internet. Now, this can involve children, but can also involve other populations. What's important is the power dynamic. You have one person controlling another person's actions and forcing them as though they are slaves to perform these sex acts. So that's sex trafficking. What's labor trafficking? Labor trafficking is involving any kind of work that's not sex work. So, for example, there was an instance of labor trafficking in which the cops broke up a massage parlor. All the women that were working in the parlor, although they were not being sex trafficked, they were working for their trafficker. All their wages went to their trafficker. He controlled their identification. He controlled where they lived. He controlled where they worked. He was in complete control of their lives. They were basically slaves to this man. Okay, so there are gradations of this, and this affects not just one labor market, but many. So labor trafficking can have many different dynamic forms, and it looks very different. Now let's get into the vulnerable populations. Who gets involved in trafficking? First, we have, unfortunately, children. Okay, way back in 2016, it was reported that all the instances of human trafficking in Kentucky, 60% of which involved children. 60%. And that statistic has probably gone up since 2016. But the children are not the only vulnerable population. You have the homeless. Also in 2016, UofL did a study. 40% of homeless youth said that they had been sex trafficked at some point. Then you have drug addicts. Drug addicts are particularly vulnerable to being trafficked because they have an addiction. So someone could say, I'll supply you with drugs, but you have to do X, Y, Z for me. And lastly, illegal immigrants. In order for immigrants to get into America illegally, oftentimes they employ criminal groups to smuggle them in. And this gets them embroiled in some form of human trafficking. So those are all the vulnerable populations to trafficking. Let's talk statistics. Now, I went first to the Kentucky Department of Education, and they stated that there were 332 instances of human trafficking identified from 2008 to 2016. Remember that number, 332, 60% of which involved kids. Okay, but 2016 was a long time ago, so are there any better stats? Well, I went to Kentucky.gov and I got this. Quote, in 2022 alone, Kentucky received 344 reports of human trafficking involving 399 child victims. 399 child victims. Remember, from 2008 to 2016, there were only 332 instances, period. But in 2022 alone, there are 399 child victims, not even talking about all those other adults and vulnerable populations. This is, according to ky.gov, a 67% increase in reports and a 71% increase in victims compared to 2022. So what is contributing to this explosion in human trafficking? higher drug addiction, higher homelessness, and yes, unfortunately, the increased chaos on our southern border, which has made it easier for criminal elements to traffic individuals. All of these are factors that have increased in recent years and therefore increase the stats. Now, here's the good part. How can we combat it? Well, Catholic Charities has what's called the Bakhita Empowerment Initiative. The Bakhita Empowerment Initiative works one-on-one with victims of human trafficking. So they deal directly with people who have been involved with this. They help get children who have been kidnapped connected with their families. They help other victims, if they need it, become naturalized citizens. They help victims of trafficking get gainful employment, find housing, and become independent citizens apart from their trafficker. And this is the other half of what Bakhita does. They go out and they educate the community. They talk at the schools, they talk to the government, and yes, they educate vulnerable populations to help everyone understand what does trafficking look like and how do you report it. That's very, very important. Now, the last thing I have to talk about is that invitation. You guessed it. The Bakhita Initiative is going to be working with my department to give a special evening talk on Wednesday, October 11th. Wednesday, October 11th, they're taking part in a special speaker series that I have going on throughout all of October. But they will be having a panel discussion to talk about what human trafficking looks like in Kentucky, and you can hear stories from the victims themselves. So if that sounds like something interesting to you or someone you know, please spread the word to save the date on Wednesday, October 11th, and watch my newsletter for greater details on where and when that will be taking part. Now, that's all the time I have today. If you like what I'm doing here, smash that like button. Please subscribe, share my video, and hit the notification bell to let you know when new material comes out. Remember, every human life is worth fighting for because every human life has dignity in the eyes of God. God bless you, and we'll see you here next week.